Hello, everybody. I am so excited to be here today and interviewing Medium's CEO, Tony Stubblebine. Before we get started, I just want to double check. How is everyone's audio? Am I echoing? I've got a new mic. And I just want to double check that it's been set up correctly. So if you can just let me know in the comments if everything sounds okay, if you can hear me all right, if there's an echo, anything like that, and we can go ahead and get started. And here's Tony. Hey, Tony, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great. Am I okay?
I can't hear you. Hang on.
Setting.
Okay.
Audio. All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. Super.
How are
Super
you?
cool. What a time I'm having. I am feeling really good about my first week at Medium. In this job, I feel like I've been. I'm just changing my Zoom settings a little bit. All right. Yeah, I've been at Medium in some capacity since before it launched. As an advisor, I shared office space. I've been major publisher and partner there for a long time, and but yeah, obviously this is very different. This is a much bigger role.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you everyone for joining us live. Like I said, I'm super thrilled to have this interview. And Tony, thank you so much for taking time out of what I know has got to be a very busy schedule since you started being Medium CEO. What I'd like to start with is for anyone who maybe is new to Medium or who is just catching this interview before they really get started, from you, can you describe what Medium's like for a non-Medium reader and then maybe what it's like for a non-Medium writer? Like someone who reads on the internet but isn't familiar.
We're aspiring to be the best place for the best ideas and the best information. And that's a very broad statement. And, if I knew more about the reader, I would sharpen it for their interest, because we have, I think, more than 100 core topics that get covered pretty deeply on Medium. And so if you're interested in poetry, there's poetry. And the poetry community is very active and passionate. But same if you're interested in entrepreneurship, in writing, in programming, in self-improvement, in health, fitness, news. Like, there's a lot of good articles from really smart, often really knowledgeable people with knowledge that you never would have run into otherwise. And that's basically what Medium is for the reader. For the author, we want to be a really simple, easy place to publish, and that starts with our tools, to have like simple, well-designed tools, and it starts by having just having that faith that maybe if you haven't built an audience already, there's someone at Medium who will read your stuff. And that actually works really well for beginner writers, but also works really well for we have a lot of professional experts that come through, like doctors or therapists, or like big time managers in design or and engineering. Like, I'm thinking about some of my favorite authors who they have day jobs and they don't have time to build. Like, the reason they're such compelling authors is because they're out doing such interesting work and they don't have time to build a following in order to get heard. And so Medium often does a really good job of finding these really deep takes from subject matter experts of all types, and elevating them so thousands or tens of thousands of readers can get to them.
Yeah. I'd like to add to that. One thing that really drew me to Medium back in the early days, I read two really fantastic personal essays. One by Becca, and I can't remember her last name. It was about her divorce and how since she got divorced, she'd found so much more freedom in cooking. And she wrote this ode to the pomegranate seed. And it was such a moving,
Right.
amazing personal essay. And I was so glad to have had the chance to read it. It's the kind of piece that I would have expected to read like in The Cut or The Atlantic, but she had no writing experience. She would have never, well, maybe she would have, but I don't think she could have been published there. But Medium gave her that platform, promoted her article, and
Exactly.
people like me got to read it. And Shannon Ashley wrote, sorry?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love these. What are the greatest hits?
Yeah, yeah. And Shannon Ashley, she's such a good writer. I love her stuff on Medium. She wrote 20 Married and Still a Virgin. And again, a personal essay that just like shocked me. And it was so moving and so emotional. Like I had not had any very similar life experiences to her, but I could still see myself in her writing. And that was really fantastic. So to your sort of expert comment, I just want to add, I've found Medium is such a good place for elevating personal essays from people who aren't experts in anything but their own lives.
Right. That's something that we've had to really explain when we were, I come from the editorial side, like I ran publications, and we'd always remind people, by definition, you're an expert in your own experience and in your own life. And so those articles that you mentioned are that way. When you were talking about them, it reminded me of this article that a lot of people in Medium still talk about, which is this trucker wrote an incredible essay about what the supply chain crisis like actually is, right? And it's like, you can read that in the New York Times, but they're out interviewing people like this trucker. And it's like, we felt so grateful that we had the source material published, raw on Medium. And it was a really well-written essay and it had a ton of information. And it was like such a, like pull back the curtain moment that you wouldn't really get anywhere else.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. So I'm going to start peppering you with some questions. I think what everyone here is most excited to hear about is what you plan to change and what you plan to keep the same. So I'd like to frame that as like, what do you admire most about Medium today? Like, what do you think is its strength, both for readers and for writers? And what are you most excited to maybe start changing, to pivoting to benefit those readers and those writers?
I'll tell you, I actually got my first change released yesterday. So,
amazing.
And that'll tell you, I think, a lot about everyone. Like, I think people are seeing that I'm listening to the community in a way that maybe they haven't felt heard before, but they also have a, show don't tell mindset. So on day one, all I can do is say what I'm going to do and listen. But, now a couple of days in, there's now starting to be a track record. So for me, I am totally serious about what I said about doubling down on the publishing tools and doubling down on the quality of the subscription. Those two things are the pillars of our company, and they're, I think, could be pillars of the internet. Like I came here to do something special. Those are the two things that I think we could, there's a lot of special things you could do, but those are the two things that I think we can do at a really, really high level. So, So one of the changes that I've been pushing internally, in which the team has been very receptive for, is just real focus. And I think we've tried a lot of experiments over the years. They weren't pivots, but they were maybe not quite attached to the a real clarity about what our core is. And we learned good lessons. But for me, people have to know that they can trust our tools. And that starts with, for me, it started with just fixing bugs. And so yesterday, it's actually the first, I'm sounding confusing because I'm confused about when my first day was. So I started on the 11th, announced to the team on the 12th, but legally became the CEO on the 20th. So my experience is very muddy in that way, because I had, I basically had full access to the team starting on the 12th. And so I'd filed a bug report about response notifications in the iPhone app. Basically, if they get rolled up, if it's you have 3 responses on your post, you tap through and you get the responder's profile files, not the actual responses. And so I'm
Right.
like constantly frustrated. I want to read the response and I don't know where this bug came from, how it got done that way. But it's certainly new. It wasn't always that way. And so I had this experience of I filed my first bug report. And because I'm in so many meetings, I didn't get to it till like 11 at night. And I went to bed. I woke up, and we have a Paris team, and our iPhone developers, maybe all of them, but certainly some of them are in Paris. And so I woke up at 6 the next morning, and it had been fixed. But it takes a couple days for us to get it rolled out to the App Store, and so it just showed up on my phone yesterday. And so we've been talking a lot about, what are the beautiful parts of Medium that are maybe hidden because some other part of Medium got a little crufty or something. So, like we have an amazing editor, right? And people always talk internally about, can we make it even more amazing? And I said, well, we can, but first, let's make sure every part of this experience is top notch, and we can't have bugs like that hanging around. We have to really jump on them. And so that's about focus. That's about like believing that what we have is what we is important, and therefore it's important to keep it in excellent shape at all times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like what you want, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is you want to ensure that people still have a great place to easily publish their stories. That's the strength of Medium, and something you want to not necessarily change, just maintain. And the thing you want to the thing you do want to change is ensuring that those bugs are ironed out, that it is a smooth experience to write something and also like respond to your community. That's something that's really important. Yeah. That's, right. I mean, as a writer, that's awesome to hear.
And then the other thing is, that's the pillar, the publishing pillar. On the subscription pillar, we want to raise the bar. We want to constantly be raising the bar. And the thing that the reason behind it is on the subscription, we serve the subscribers. That's our primary. What is it that they're paying us for, and how can we give them the absolute most value that we can? And we've done a very good job. It's a shockingly large business already with hundreds of thousands of subscribers. But it's also, as someone who comes from a content background, I see a million ways that we could do even better. And so our starting point is always, what can we do for the subscribers? But then when I think about raising the bar, I think, well, how is that going to affect authors? And the main way is, you'll get paid more when you exceed the bar, but you're going to have to do more work. And what more work means is, really dependent on you. I mean, like when we talk subject matter experts, more work doesn't have anything to do with writing. It's like, go live an interesting life so that that's a lot of the work. The research is a lot of the work. The revisions is a lot of the work, right?
So I've noticed something in some of your answers. I think of myself as a writer, and you always refer to people like me who write on Medium as authors. And I remember from a previous conversation we've had that when I've asked you, how do you think writers could succeed on Medium, or authors, you have this idea that people should be writing content as though they're publishing a book, as though they're thinking about writing a book and getting that published on Medium. And I just wondered if that sort of dovetails with you calling people authors, because, book authors. Is that still something you would recommend for authors/writers?
It's interesting. I thought we might talk about it for you, actually. But I think the reason I use authors is because when I got started in media, I did work for a book company. I worked for O'Reilly Media, which had an online publishing arm, but primarily we were publishing our book authors. So, hey, author, actually, if you're getting pedantic, is the right term here, because if you don't, in order to be an author, you have to publish, and we're a place for people to publish their writing. So if you're writing behind in your journal, you're a writer, but in order, we're looking for people who want to publish to the world. So that's why I say author. this idea that I put out months ago as a path to thinking about higher quality, right, with a book in mind,
Mhm.
is not like the official dogma of Medium in any way. It's
Mhm.
me putting on my old coaching hat and saying what's a mantra that a lot of authors could adopt and be more successful. So there's some, especially when you're getting going, there's this real impulse to write on anything and everything, and I think that's really
Mhm.
good for getting the writing muscle built up. Um, but there's incredible rewards when you specialize enough. And a book is a pretty good bar for how much specialization is required. And so
Mhm.
I find a lot of the authors that I like on Medium, they're they're obviously writing towards a book. So like we publish a lot of Scott H. Young, who is already an author of this book, Ultra Learning. And when I read his articles, I just recognize in them he's working out how to explain concepts that are going
Mhm.
to show up in a book down the road. And I know as a book author too that um, when I wrote my first book, which is a long time ago, is a programming topic. I knew nothing about the topic when I started, but by the end of writing the book, I was an expert on that topic. And I
Right.
want that, and that told me the lesson that taught me is that anyone could be an expert. I mean, I went into that
Mhm.
knowing nothing. It was a grueling process. It was such an awful experience, and that's part of it. Is you really have to push yourself, but um, by the end, you have a new skill that is like world class. Like almost no one does that level of work.
Mhm.
Um,
That
so
level of research, yeah.
it's not for yeah, it's not for everyone, but I'm hoping that a lot of people embrace um, what it means to be like really, really push yourself to be so much better than you are right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So I create content primarily for writers slash authors, to use your pedantic terms. And
Shit.
I think something
Yeah.
that it's important to a lot of us to understand how to be successful on a platform. I know Medium is not currently aiming to give a full-time income to everyone who writes on it, but for a writer slash author to be successful on Medium, what would you recommend? If not, like, what is the official Medium dogma on how to be successful?
Um, I mean, it's hard to. I think it's hard to have dogma because there's so many different ways,
Right.
um, and uh, and even like I just want to back out of like it's not Medium's job to, as you say, to give full time income. Like we're trying to
Mhm.
serve our subscribers,
Right.
and so I'm back to putting on like a teaching hat or a coaching hat, right? Like there's a bunch of different paths that work. So one path is that you're writing just for reputation because you have um, uh, some other business that it supports. It's sort of like you're building a portfolio that supports your expertise somewhere else. Like, why do medical doctors write on Medium? Like, we're certainly not offering, when we talk about full-time writer incomes, we're not offering medical doctor level full-time incomes to anyone.
Mhm.
And so they're writing for some other reason. They're writing either to give back or to build a reputation that they use in some other way.
Mhm.
So that's a good path. Um, the another is the beginner path. Like this is a place to build a portfolio to figure out what works,
Mhm.
and that's a big part of growing in your career is having a place to practice. I think once you're past that level, uh, what works now probably won't work forever.
Right.
I mean, that's here I am a couple days into my job, and you're my second interview, and both times I talked about how I expect the bar to get raised, and and so how do you meet the bar? I don't think you can write on all topics, and I don't, and I
Mhm.
think that our readers don't want to read necessarily the same author on all topics. I mean, if they follow you, then they follow you. But when we're talking about, I don't like what's the current topic right now, or we're a couple months away from Ukraine, right? Like if you've been writing like self-improvement for the last 6 months and then you put a Ukraine article out, hey, good for you for like kind of expanding and broadening. But we have other experts on Ukraine. Why, like, I don't think we don't necessarily see, like, how did you suddenly become an expert in Ukraine?
Right.
And, you could do that, but I think a lot of people just feel like they could be an expert at anything and everything, and expertise takes time.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
And so when the bar gets raised, I think it puts pressure on people to specialize.
I want to talk a little bit about the mechanisms behind meeting that raised bar. So I know I hate to use the word algorithm because I know it's a really complex subject, and I know it's not just a matter of like the people pressing a button on the algorithm and an article goes viral. I know that's kind of at least my daydream. I know that's not reality though. So can you talk a little bit about what happens behind the scenes for when people meet the bar? How does that story get pushed out to their followers or publication followers, or even just people who have never heard of that person before?
Yeah, I mean, we have a bunch of surface areas. I mean, this is kind of like technically how we think about it. It's like you have your main feed, you have emails, you have recommended reads on individual posts. So like a bunch of surface areas like that where articles get recommended to people. And who you follow is a main driver of that. But there's also a lot of pure recommendation, and that's driven by the machine learning, the AI, the recommendation algorithm. And then there's factors that feed into that, which include human curation all over the place. We still have our own human curators, and we're constantly looking to change how we do that to raise the bar. But we also have a bunch of partner publications, so that their curation signal matters a lot as well.
Right.
I would expect that we will put in more tools in place for the external publishing partners.
Is that like, sorry, just to clarify on what an external publishing partner is? Is that publications like one of my favorites is Books Are Our Superpower, internal to Medium, but not owned by Medium. Is that what you mean, or do you mean something else?
Wait, is Books Are a Superpower internal to Medium? Isn't that Anamsha's publication?
Yeah, but I thought you created it on Medium.
Oh, I mean, it's on Medium. Yeah. Right. So she's not owned by me. That publication.
Right. Yeah. It's run independently, as far as I know.
Right. It is independent. Yes. These publications, like towards data science, Better Mind, Better Programming, Better Humans, Better Marketing, we're in them. I actually don't know the current list, but we have thousands of publications, but there was a number of community hubs that were like the first place that authors would look to get published. And we've given some of them curation ability to like bump something up. And then that sort of broke down. That power is still there, but it's not that powerful anymore.
Right. Okay.
I think we'd like to get back to empowering more people in the community to give meaningful recommendations that work their way into the algorithm. And I think this is an important part of how I see the community is, and also the arc of being an author on Medium is the first thing you need to do is just publish something, right? But after that, like, what's the first milestone to shoot for? And I actually really like having all of these big community hubs in the community that are kind of topic focused, because it gives new authors something to shoot for. And and that's kind of a way to work your way up the ladder. So I expect that we'll do more of that going forward, but we haven't really given them the right tools yet to do meaningful curation. But I think, I mean, if they're listening, I think they're really important, and I want to make sure that that they are elevated in the ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. I 100% agree. I love publications on Medium. As a new writer, I especially like them because they let me sort of, try out different topics and figure out what I wanted to write about. I wrote about cats in, this publication is now defunct, but in Tenderly, one of the old Medium run pubs. That was really great.
Right.
I wrote about like my experience in data science and towards data science, obviously. I love publications, and I'm really glad to hear that they're going to be more empowered, it sounds like, in the future, because I agree. I think they're a really important role in helping readers get to the right content that suits their needs and their interests.
Yep.
Okay, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you feel Medium fits into the creator economy, specifically with regards to how it competes / sits next to platforms like Substack or LinkedIn. One comparison I see a lot is that Substack is competing with Medium, and I kind of disagree. I think there's room for both to coexist next to each other.
Yeah, I mean, competitively, I think we end up in skirmishes with like 7 or 8 different publishing options, and it's because that indicates that there's some class of author where the decision's not clear. But on a day-to-day basis, I really never think about any of that. Like, our job is to make great publishing tools, and not to steal authors from other that are happy somewhere else, but to empower people that are currently don't have a good option. And for one, Medium is free. Like, that's a differentiator not for LinkedIn and Substack, but for Ghost and WordPress, right? And so there's like a whole category of authors that's like, let's make this as free and as simple as possible. Let's make it free and as simple as possible. And so that means that there's a category of author that we serve much better than WordPress. That's a lot of work to get going. And I've run WordPress sites recently, even where I thought, oh, in this case, WordPress is going to be better. And so that's fine. I mean, I want authors to succeed. I want them to be clear on what is the right tool for them. And it's like that movie Miracle on 34th Street, where the Santa Claus starts sending people to a different store. Like, if we don't have what you need, like, I think I'd like to just be really upfront about that.
Yeah.
So on that front, like, what I tell the team and what I want to tell all the authors is just like, hey, we're just trying to be ourselves. We're trying to be great at that, and if it works, great. And obviously it does work, because it works for a lot of people. On the creator economy, you'd sent that question over ahead of time, and I was thinking about it. It was actually the question I thought the most about, because I have maybe a non-standard answer for it. The most important thing I think I'd like to serve the creator economy is by giving great information to the creator economy. Like, this is not necessarily the place where you make a living. It doesn't have to be. I mean, it doesn't have to be the place where you make a living. Like, what's the most important to me is that this is a place where you get the information where you can make a living. And then, this is in writing, because I'm so aware of how much money can be made off of expertise. This goes back to like, write with a book in mind, or we're going to raise the bar. I really would encourage a lot of writers who think of themselves as like I'm getting paid to write, to think bigger, to think about using that writing as a path to developing expertise, which then opens up consulting, speaking, book deals.
Yes. Yeah. It's so great to hear you echo that. This is what I try to tell a lot of my subscribers. Medium is not my full-time income, and I am really glad that's the case. Of course, I am happy to make money by writing about what I love, but I also love to use Medium as a vehicle for additional opportunities. Like I've had like consulting gigs. I've had a lot of freelance writing requests come to me through Medium as a portfolio. I've been asked to advise on some companies that are just getting started up, all through Medium, because I've been writing there and people read that and say, oh, Zuli clearly knows what she's talking about. Let's get in touch with her. And that's a really, really good way to think of Medium as the vehicle to success, not necessarily like the destination. So I'm thrilled to hear that you feel similarly.
Plus one, please echo that over and over and over again. I think that's a great way to teach that concept. Yeah.
Cool. So one question that's coming up a lot in the chat I'm seeing, I think it's been asked over 10 times, so I'd love to address it now, mostly so people can ask some different questions. This has been this has been a question of Medium since I've been writing on there, which is that Medium supports very few countries, globally speaking, in terms of the Medium Partner Program. Originally, it sounded like it was because Stripe didn't support those countries, and obviously Medium pays through Stripe, but now there are countries supported by Stripe that Medium still doesn't pay. Do you have any thoughts on that or any upcoming changes?
It's one thing that I have to look into. I'm a total newbie on this topic. I've seen the question before. I always thought it was exactly like, as an outsider, I thought it was exactly what you said. Like, Medium's not a payments company. Like, we have plenty to do with just our core publishing tools, like before we start getting into the weeds of payments. So this is like, I always thought, oh, this is a question for Stripe. Like, why isn't Stripe supporting these countries? And I never heard the answer. And I always thought, hey, people should be yelling at Stripe. Like, Stripe is 100 times bigger than Medium right now. Like, if they can't do it, why would we think Medium could do it? And but then now I'm more recently hearing the news that there's Stripe companies that are countries that Stripe supports that Medium still doesn't. And I honestly haven't found the answer yet. I'm still on my internal listening tour, and I think I haven't run into our payments team yet. Do I conceptually support people from all over the world publishing on Medium? Yeah, absolutely. That's not a very satisfying answer. I probably, I don't know yet. I'm still in my learning phase, and I do expect to get into it shortly, though.
Okay. Yeah. I just re-echo what it's one of the most popular questions I get, most commonly asked is when is Stripe going to be available? Okay, cool. So what I would love to hear, conceptually speaking, what's going to happen in the next, say, 3 months, and then maybe more broadly, what do you think is going to happen in the next year to Medium? Just broad strokes. Any big changes you anticipate happening? That you can share?
Well, when I got interviewed, I got asked this question too, and I read it a little bit as like, what big, ideas do you have? What pivots are next? And this is one of the board members especially asked me about that, and I told them, I don't want to answer the question because I don't want to get hired if you think that that's what Medium needs. And so this is me saying, like, I want to double down on what's working. We're not here to pivot. We might try some interesting things, but the core is the core, and it could be a lot better. So the detail work matters a ton to me right now. That responses got fixed, and then I had feedback on it this morning, and there's going to be another revision on that. Custom domains. This is a show don't tell, but I asked for them to come back. And what's important to me is if they come back, that they don't ever go away again. This is such a basic of putting publishing tools out. You want people to feel like they can rely on you. The number one request for in my Medium post announcing me as whatever, welcoming myself to Medium or saying hello as the new CEO, the number one request was to bring the mobile editor back. So I've
glad
dug
you
into
brought that
that.
up.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know why it went away. It was for practical reasons, and then there was confusion about how quickly to bring it back, and that's very much at the top of the list of what we've been talking about internally.
Sure.
And then on the incentive side, which probably matters to a lot of your authors, it's a supply. To me, I always thought it was a supply and demand problem. Like,
yes.
As a publisher, the word I used was dilution. Like, I thought, we published in the better publications, we've published thousands of articles. And so I had this data on what is the average page view, and it just kept dropping because it was in competition with so much. And, at some level, dropping is fine. It means that someone better, got the page views instead of you. And it's like, quit whining. I was told my team, quit whining, let's just publish better stuff, right? But it got to the point that it's obvious that there's so much getting distributed that that the kind of the average page view dropped to the point that we weren't incentivizing anymore the authors that we wanted to incentivize. And so when I say raise the bar, practically that probably means fewer articles selected for distribution, which means you'll get paid more if you do get selected. And Zuli, you probably remember, actually, there was a period where maybe 1 in 5 of your articles were selected.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, curation. Right. I remember back in 2019, curation was the silver bullet, right? If you got curated, that article was going to fly because it meant that it had been, it was a low rate of success. I actually was very proud to sustain, at least in the latter half of maybe 2019, a 66% curation rate. But this stat was everybody was keeping track of it. It was a badge of pride. Whereas now it's if something doesn't get distributed, I'm like, what have I done wrong? Am I blacklisted? Is this the end of my career, etc.?
Right. And so those articles that were curated did much better, right? Than now.
Yeah, often by a factor of an order of magnitude better than the stuff that didn't get curated. Whereas now curation almost has no effect.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm saying that more as a former publisher on the platform.
Sure. Yeah.
I haven't. This is a thing that I've started to dig into internally, but I know this from the outside too. Why bother? Why? What are we doing here? Curating stuff. Essentially, our job was to curate the best of Medium, but it had no impact. And I remember 2019 just as well as you do. That was a great period to publish because it was worth it to find the best stuff. So we have to
meet
go back
those
to
rules. Yeah. Speaking as a writer, I know it really incentivized me to make sure, I wasn't breaking any rules. I was really, really steering clear of clickbait because that was heavily selected against. I was making sure that all my claims were backed up by external research, et cetera, because if I went to that effort and it got curated, it was absolutely worth it for me to have taken that time and made that effort.
Right.
So again, personally, as an author, I am thrilled to hear that is on your mind at least. Yeah. I'd love to pivot. How much time have you got?
We have a full hour. This is I have a lot of work getting the team organized, and but also I have just as much work helping the community, adapt to the change, the sort of non-change that I represent. The change I represent is no more change. And
right. Yeah, I think a lot of us are relieved to hear that.
So, but I still have work to do, and so I feel so grateful that we have this time. And so, I have the full hour. Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. I'd love to start answering some questions from the audience. I've had more than I expected, so I wanted to get started now to make sure we got to as many of them as we could. Some of them are more in the nitty gritty. Some of them are more holistic. So let's jump in from the start. So one from Andrew, who wants me to ask if there's going to be a return to customization of images. Personally, this never affected me, but I know a lot of other writers really enjoyed having the ability to make a picture like much bigger for their header image. And I just wanted to know if that was on your horizon.
I noticed it. I noticed it in a different way too, which
Mhm.
is I did the translation importing of the Pragmatic Programmer books to import
Right.
them into Medium. So I was like hyper aware of things that didn't transfer very well, and they use a
Mhm.
lot of inline images. And I thought,
Mhm.
yeah, this is a normal thing to do sometimes, especially in technical writing. Why don't we
Right.
support this? It's like, and even in my own writing, it's like I put a like iPhone screenshot in, and it's giant compared to what I want it to be.
Yeah.
This is one where I feel fairly confident that it's not imminent, just because I
Okay.
know the part of the tech stack that is required, and we're just not doing a ton of work in there right now.
Mhm.
But I agree that there's something more to do there, and I think we'll get to it. And that's actually like a great example of focus, right? Like if we stay focused, we actually will get to it, even if it's not in the next couple of months.
Right. So on your mind, not in the next quarter, most likely.
Yep.
A question from a fan. Aline wants to know if you're still going to be writing or active in Better Humans.
This is I've had such a positive experience, but this is the one downer for me. Is I had been writing a daily newsletter, and I knew, and like just prepping for this job, it got so hectic that I put it on pause, and I said, hey, I'm coming back on Wednesday the 13th, and I have not come back yet. And and so I will, because the way I got the job was by using Medium.
Yeah.
Like everything I know about Medium, I learned by using it. And I think that the intuition for Medium is so important. And so I see the opportunities, and the obvious one is just to have a regular writing cadence. But I was reading an article in Mac O'Clock about, the latest like MacBook Air, and I thought, yeah, this would actually be a good article for me to write, like, because now I get a new laptop as part of my new job. And like
Nice.
the old me was always like talking about the details of productivity, and so this like decision of which laptop did I choose and why and how did I set it up, that's a good article. And I don't have to publish it in Better Humans. I could publish it in one of the other publications here, which I think would be
Mhm.
such a good signal, because you know I don't think I've ever seen a Medium employee go write an article for
No.
some, right? And but I have to find the time. And right now my days are meetings all day, a brief rest, and then writing all night, like a lot writing to the team. It's like Slack messages and emails,
Right. Yeah.
and signing. I signed a bunch of legal documents yesterday, which was actually the only indication that anything changed in terms of like legally becoming the CEO.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, Better Humans will continue. Terry's still running it. Um, I I'll tell you, I'm thinking that it would be interesting to bring the betters inside of Medium, but run it, but mostly as a way for people at Medium to get the experience of running a
Mhm.
publication. And I think when we had our editorial pubs, we ran them differently and with different advantages than the platform. And I feel
Yeah.
like, what if we ran 3 publications that were like demos of what everyone could do, and we also use it as a place for us to get experience on how do our tools actually work, to actually get intuition around how they work. So I I expect all 3 publications will continue, basic, maybe with tighter focuses, but definitely continue. And obviously, for people who know me, Better Humans has been a passion of mine for years.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
yeah, and also
Yeah.
my newsletter, it'll come back. It will come back.
I'm sure there are thousands of readers who are very, very happy to hear that.
I have I could give you a sneak preview. This is what I think the title is going to be. Zuli, I'm not sure. You can give me feedback on it. It's essentially,
Yeah.
I realized I was so busy that I'm not eating lunch. And because like, they're just not, I'm not eating actually at all until later in the day. Because like people are just not giving me time. And so I'm just like, every now and then I'll get a snack, but it's not happening. And so I thought, well, this is actually a good way to like talk about the difference of in my life and how that might affect productivity and why I haven't written yet. So I think the title that I'm thinking is like, your boss is in a bad mood because they haven't eaten yet. And like something along those lines is what I'm noodling on, because this is my life. It's like I've been giving out productivity advice for so long, but it was based on a very different workload. And
Different
so now
lifestyle, yeah.
I have to remake all of it, right? And I think that's probably going to be the focus of that newsletter for a little while is remaking your productivity systems.
I would click on it. I don't know how. I'm awful at judging titles, to be honest, but I
Totally.
can tell you that I personally would enjoy that, and that would make me click.
Good. All right.
A great one from Marty Spandex, who wants to know if there's going to be the option to record audio within stories. I have some personal context to add to this. I used to do this myself. I used to record audio on like SoundCloud and then import it as like an embedded link. Because like I'd read my articles aloud and embed them because I thought it was nice. And I stopped doing it because it was just slightly too much friction. So I know there's obviously Knowable lets you, is it Knowable? I don't know which.
Knowable, yes.
Lets you embed this sort of robot voice. Are there any plans or any thoughts on how to allow authors to do that themselves? Because I agree with Marty. I do think it would help build a stronger connection with audiences.
Yeah, I think so. It's always been obvious to me that if we keep that audio like sort of area, that we should use it for use it in different ways. So the robot voice or whatever has actually been a huge success because for people who need that, right?
100%.
It makes the article more accessible to people who either like in a bunch of ways, but the most common way actually is aren't at a screen and can't read. So like people who are traveling and whatnot. I think it's possible that that'll go to be members only. There's just something about the deal that we have with the company that does that for us, and the cost of it is actually it's expensive, but it's not just that. It's like we want to make the membership as valuable as possible, and that's this is like a thing that's very valuable to the people that use it. I have wondered whether that's a place for the Knowable interviews. So we have this audio only learning app, Knowable, that we had acquired them, but the app is still out there and they're still publishing expert interviews. Zuli has been one of them. I've been one of them. It's a really good learning platform, but we haven't totally integrated it into the company yet. That would actually be an obvious thing to do. Is the interview is the audio version of your book, and it's a lot better than the robot, or the audio version of your article, and it's a lot better than the robot.
Yeah.
Podcasts, I don't know if he's listening, but I really like Peter Attia's podcast, and I'm sure he's not listening. But and I paid for his subscription for a while because it was they're 2-hour podcasts. I didn't ever have time to listen to the whole thing, and so I paid for the show notes. The show notes were fantastic, and I always thought, well, why is Peter Attia off doing this on his own? Isn't there some way to do this on Medium?
Yeah.
So we have aspirations like that, and that's kind of how can we be a better partner to podcasters? Definitely interested in stuff like that.
Yeah. Something that's come up a lot, I know in the writer groups that I'm part of, is SEO and external views. So today, as most people know, when you're part of the Medium Partner Program, you get paid when a paying Medium member reads your article. You get paid a portion of their membership fee. Right now, that means there's not a huge reward for optimizing for SEO. I would also love to hear the answer for this. If there's any plan to help incentivize external views or reward them in some way?
I think it's obvious we should. I don't I thought that from the beginning. There's this we pay right now. Medium pays lip service to the idea that we pay for external traffic, because if an external viewer signs up off of your article, then your view is counted.
It's heavier, right? Yeah.
But it's not heavier. It's just counted
same
as any other view.
Okay, right. And well, I guess if they don't read that much at the start, then I can see that maybe you could say that you kind of get rewarded because maybe they're not reading that many other people at the start, just you.
But I think they actually are reading a lot at the start. And even if they just read yours, they're just getting a portion only of that first month's payment. And it's like, well, wait a second. Like the authors that grow the pie for all of us, like if you're in the partner program, don't you want to pay the most to the authors that grow the pie, that bring new readers in for you? Of course. Mm-hmm. So in terms of incentives, it seems like incredibly obvious that we should pay more. And then just if you break down where the money and the subscription goes, we could. The question then is, then I think we get into the weeds, and I haven't gotten into it with people yet. I think probably we're going to be concerned about opening that up to everyone. There's, especially on the SEO front, is bad SEO work hurts everyone, and that's harder to monitor. But I honestly, I'm ready today to pick 50 authors that are already doing good SEO work and just manually bonus them on SEO. Like we've had a lot of bonus programs here, and for the most part, I don't think they've quite been fully aligned with everyone's interests, and but external is, and so I would love to do experiments with that early on. And if actually, as a publisher, I used to. One of our authors, John Fox, who writes a lot of fitness stuff for us. I used to say, like, if your article gets 100,000 views, you get an extra couple $100. And the only way to do that is to target SEO.
Yeah,
he did it a bunch of times. And
that's so cool.
And it completely, and the thing I love about SEO is you go back to like expertise and whatnot. It's like, when you're writing for SEO, you're trying to write the definitive answer to something. And and like that is totally on mission for us, is to bring the greatest information, great information out to people. If we can help bring into existence more and better definitive works on every topic everywhere, I'll be very happy. Yeah. So the incentive for us is to say yes to external incentives. Yes, absolutely. We should be doing that.
I think this is something that's really highlighting, as an author, hearing your answers here, hearing the difference between what you're saying. It sounds like you're coming I'm not making a lot of sense. A lot of these questions are writer focused, right? Not about readers. But I think it's great to hear that you're thinking about things also from a publishing perspective yourself, which, like you said, I don't know for sure, but I think a lot of the internal Medium staff don't have a huge amount of experience writing on the platform, running a publication on the platform.
Right.
So I think that's really highlighted for me in your answers, is that you have experience with this, and you know from personal experience how valuable it is to optimize for SEO. Right. So happy to hear that.
All the detail work, but also like the hustle of it, right? Like you're saying that, and I'm thinking, it would be a good program for Medium employees is they have to take a vacation paid only by the amount of money they've made as a Medium author or something like that, right? Just so like there's like real pressure to like go like make a living as an author is really, it's hard, but
Hard.
also like you have to get out of your comfort zone a lot of times. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, absolutely. I felt I had a really positive reaction to getting announced. Like one thing is I'm replacing an all-time great in the tech industry, someone who's
Yeah.
done amazing things, founder of Blogger, founder of Twitter. And, I'm more like, if you know me, you know me, but certainly not in any way a luminary like that. And what I think made the announcement so positive for so many people is a lot of people in the community felt like it was an internal promotion.
One of
Like,
our own.
and in a lot of ways it was, because that's how, like, there was other candidates. They had a lot of different good experiences, but it just came back to I knew the platform better than anyone.
Inside and out. Yeah.
Inside and out. Yep.
Yeah. Let's whiz through a couple of ones just before I release you to the rest of your obligations. A great one from Talia wants to know if there are going to be any steps to try to grow the non-US audience. And this is something I've thought a lot about as well. I'd love to hear your take on this.
So, I mean, there's two parts to this, as far as I know. One is, are we publishing in other languages? And then the other is it easy for international subscribers to subscribe? So actually, on the latter, I didn't realize it wasn't always easy. And I haven't greenlit anything there, but that actually was a thing that I only learned recently, that not everyone has an easy time paying for the subscription. So that seems worth fixing. Are we close to launching Medium in other languages? No. I think we have a lot of core work still to do before we feel like we nailed it in the original language. So this is not a year one even on my radar right now.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, great to hear. And honestly, thank you for the candidness. I really appreciate it.
That's
okay.
I think you're like that. I think that's one of the changes, like the sort of the non-change change is just we want to be much more transparent, and I'm much more transparent, and I'm for a CEO fairly chatty. Like I like to talk to people. I responded to the vast majority of responses to my hello post. Hundreds of people, and I think that's a change in Medium, is that we're not going to be pivoting, but we're going to be talking a lot more to people, and we want to be direct so that you can, so that it's easy for you to make the decisions you need to make as a reader or an author. Because I think this doesn't work for me, that's true for some people, but also the case for using Medium is often so clear that, and if we're not direct, that doesn't come across. So one of my goals is to be much more transparent and much more direct.
Well, that leads me to my last two questions. You've said you're ready to listen, and you have proven it in 100 different ways by answering to those hundreds of comments you've received. What's the best way for readers and writers to stay in touch with you?
Well, good news. We've built a publishing platform that has a bunch of different ways to do this. So most people just responded. Zuli, did you see the Tony Stubblebine topic on Medium though?
I saw you tweeted it. It did make me laugh. So for anybody who's new to Medium, you can add 5 tags, same as Instagram, like hashtags, and all the stories get cataloged by those tags. And there is now a Tony Stubblebine tag on Medium that has 6 stories as of yesterday. I was really, really tickled to see that.
And the one that we're laughing about, it's get your hate pieces in now to avoid the rush, and it's just about using me as a punching bag. And it was satire, but like I saw that, it's like if you tag me in your article, I'll see it, and if you respond to something I've written, I'll see it, and so use Medium. I mean, that's basically the answer right now. And also, I'm not the only person you can talk to. I expect probably next week you're going to hear from one of the product managers here and about something we've been working on. And we're planning, we have an editorial calendar in the works. Like there's a bunch more posts coming up that actually are the show don't tell. Like, hey, here's something that's new that you can you can talk to us about and respond to.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, really exciting. Okay, last question. I'll make it quick. What's the best story you've ever read on Medium? And if that's too stressful a question, what's a good story you've read recently?
No, there's this David Paul Kirkpatrick piece about creativity and the creative impulse that I've been thinking. This is not a short answer, and we can go over for it. About the creative impulse. And we had published it in Better Humans, and I'd sort of like glossed over it. But then I saw him repost it on his Facebook with more context. And so the deal with David is he used to be the head of Paramount Studios. So for us, this was this incredibly weird experience that this former like big time movie producer like walked into our publication and said, "Hey, I've got stuff to write. Will you publish it?" And the dream, right? And he has such an interesting perspective. But one of his perspectives is he's been around a lot of people that are driven by a creative impulse. So I think when we talk about creativity, we think about a skill, but a lot of it is like a feeling that like sometimes you can't control. And so I was thinking about this article a lot recently because, one of the reasons that I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a writer is because I have a creative impulse that needs to be fed. And so David's article is about managing it, because if you give yourself over to it, you lose in a lot of different ways. But if you don't give yourself over to it, you also lose in a lot of ways. And he actually talked, pretty openly about a lot of, famous creatives who died because they weren't able to manage their creative impulse. And that helped me see how serious it is. So this article is, see if I can find it for.
I've been Googling. I can't. Is it?
But this goes back to why I want to write the newsletter, right? It's like I can't just be a manager here. Like I have to still be connected to here we go. I'll post it in the comments.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I was going to ask.
How do I post it in your comments?
You can post it in the private chat, and I've just sent a message in the private chat, which hopefully you should see on. Oh, there we go. Ideal. Yep. I'll post it in the main chat, and I'll post it in the video description as well. I think it's good. Both, like, it's interesting to hear what you find valuable and what you personally enjoy, but also as a writer, it's good to hear what kind of content inspires you and is exciting and interesting to you. Just to know what to shoot for.
And I think that article is, relevant to all of us, right? It's like, at some level we're talking about making money and making a living, but what drew us here in the first place? Like we all have some creative impulse that we're serving there. So this is one of my favorites.
Well, I will let you go. Thank you for going over, for answering that. And thank you again so much for really living up to your promise, taking the time to be here, answer all these questions with honesty, which I don't want to sound too bitter, but a lot of times I've just been, this is fresh for me, and it's exciting to hear your honesty here.
Yeah. First, I appreciate you having me on, and thank you for the thank you. I want to set the expectation. Like if you want to have me or someone else at Medium on again in the future, like we writers are our lifeblood, and we want to come talk to you. And there's people, I'm not the only one in the company that wants to talk to the community. So I get at some level it's special and new, but also this could be completely regular. There's you and I and some of the other authors used to have a phone call regularly.
Yeah.
And we're available for that stuff. I mean, we learn a lot. It helps us understand, are we doing the right things? Are we being efficient in how we spend our time? So this is the new normal, people. You could talk to any of us anytime.
Well, that's great to hear. That's fantastic. And I know I'm not
Or
alone
close
when
to
I say,
that.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
as time and responsibilities allow, I would love to, continue hearing from Medium in an official capacity in the future and hear what's going on, what's important to y'all. So once again, thank you. And thank you everyone for tuning in and sending us your amazing, interesting, insightful questions. This has been a total blast, and I'll post all the relevant links in the chat in the comments so you can see them. Yeah, you know how to reach Tony, you know how to reach me, and I'll look forward to hearing from you all in the future. Bye, everyone.
Bye.